Good afternoon. I'd like to start our session today by handing over the opening to Angela Hong, who's the Deputy Director for the Los Angeles Field Office, to give welcome from the HUD. And then next I will be turning it over to our counterpart with GO-Biz, Mark Polimas, and he'll be giving also some brief remarks. Angela, you can take the microphone.
Thank you, Jeanette. Apologies for the delay, everyone, and good morning, and welcome to our second convening for Promise Zones in California. I just wanted to take this time to recognize just not only all your commitment to the communities that you serve and this Promise Zone initiative, but just the great work you've all done. And in addition to that, I also want to recognize that team's commitment. And I'm looking at like Elder and Theo, and late last year, both Lori Udit, our field office director, and I met with the Southern. We've heard you all when you said having a platform like this.
Angela, your microphone's going in and out.
Oh, can you hear me now? Is this better? Hello?
It is better, but you may be on the network, Angela, so you may need to drop off the network if you are.
Yeah.
See if that clears it up.
Let me try to adjust that. I'm in the office today. I know I've noticed when I go in the office, I've network issues. Is this better? Can folks hear me?
Much better. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. So, last year, Lori and I, we met around with the Southern California Promise Zones, and all of you echoed that you wanted a platform like this to share best practices, resources, and we want to continue addressing those concerns and needs and doing what we can to support your efforts in this work. And I know today the team has put together a very exciting panel of both state and federal partners to talk about economic resilience. Now, this is a super important topic for HUD as the agency. We've written climate resilience, environmental justice, and the integration of housing and health into our latest strategic plan. And today's partners will touch on the employment opportunities and the employment aspects of and resources related to these topics. And so I won't take up too much more time. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining us today and look forward to a very exciting panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. As Danette had mentioned, I'm going to be making some opening remarks on behalf of the state of California. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm excited to share with you all some key programs implemented by the state of California that are focused on sustainable, resilient, and equity-focused workforce and economic development. We're living in challenging and uncertain times, and the state is committed to ensure that we are putting our resources in areas to support a next century transition to sustainable economic growth. In its history, California has been the birthplace of many innovations, including computer systems, aerospace, bio, and agricultural technologies. In the face of climate change, California has invested billions of dollars to accelerate the transformation of our economy toward the production and utilization of renewable energy to ensure that California remains or improves upon its claim to being the 5th largest economy in the world. These investments advance new technologies and help bring them to scale, increasing the accessibility of these innovations. And while the state devotes to transforming our economy, we're focused on investing in human capital to ensure that industry growth is inclusive and equity focused. Collaboratively, the state is driving regional investments in economic and infrastructure planning, worker-focused training partnerships, and strategies to ameliorate the inequities in our economy that the COVID pandemic has accentuated in the past couple of years. To that end, it is my pleasure to invite Kirk from GO-Biz and colleagues from partner agencies, including Larry Riera from the California Energy Commission and Rafael Aguilera from the California Workforce Development Board, to share the critical work planned and the partnerships that have been formed to promote an inclusive transition in the state's economy. And at this time, I'd like to invite Danette to introduce or welcome the federal panel that will be discussing the federal opportunities today.
Thank you so much, Mark. One of the things we wanted to take advantage of today was to give each of our promise zones a brief opportunity to introduce themselves and share briefly about the work that they're doing and any of their team members that are present. So we want to start off with some brief remarks by Elder, who is with the Los Angeles Promise Zones. And we've asked each of our promise zones to try to keep their remarks to 2 minutes so that we can give the maximum amount of time to our panelists. Go ahead, Elder.
Hey, welcome. Thanks, Danette, for that. Yeah, I'll be brief. So my name is Elder Sustainably. I'm with the mayor's office here in Los Angeles, particularly part of the mayor's office of economic opportunity, where the LA Promise Zone kind of falls under that umbrella. It is a collective impact project that covers a 4.5 square mile area of central Los Angeles with a primary focus around increasing economic opportunities, as well as improving educational outcomes, boosting public safety, and kind of where this all fits and aligns to is building livable, equitable, and of course, sustainable neighborhoods. One of the kind of projects that particularly aligns with the kind of topics that we'll be hearing today, I think is a really exciting one around our lead implementation partner, our local community college at the heart of our Promise Zone is working to create what they're calling a creativity, innovation, and technology park, or city park, which in addition to it being an entrepreneurship incubator and business development center, will eventually add a network of institutes that are aiming to secure the future of U.S. manufacturing through innovation, collaboration, and education. So that Clean Energy Smart Manufacturing Innovation Institute, which is established by the Department of Energy, will be able to help manufacturers increase efficiency and productivity while reducing waste, error, and energy expenditure. It'll include a cyber maker space and of course train workers and be fully operate when it's fully accessible by folks around in the community, of course, those who are going to that community college as well. So I just thought I'd share that. And then Danette, would you like me to pass this on to somebody else, or?
Yes, we're going to go ahead and pass it on to Julius, who is with our Sacramento Promise Zone. And thank you so much, Elder.
Thank you, Elder. Thank you, Danette. My name is Julius. I'm the Sacramento Promise Zone coordinator for, of course, the Sacramento Promise Zone. And our lead agency for our Promise Zone is the Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency, which is the housing authority for both the city and the county of Sacramento. The amount of projects and programs we're working on is quite vast, and I know we want to be short, but we majorly are focusing on an array of projects, programs, and initiatives in education, health, workforce development and training, economic development as well. And then we also have a area that we call Sustainably Built Communities, which includes housing, community revitalization, also looking at efforts around neighborhood safety, prevention, and opportunities for arts and cultural expression. And so we definitely are doing a lot of work related to workforce development and economic development. And we engage with some partners every week around economic development. And that includes partners from the city of Sacramento, Sac State University, SMUD, and our agency. And then also we are a part of a collaborative that focuses on economic development efforts that includes our Black Chamber of Commerce, the Sacramento Kings, SMUD, and a few other partners as well. But ultimately, we have a large working group that's focused on jobs and economic development that is leaders across all sectors in Sacramento. So I'll stop there and allow Danette to announce the next Promise Zone.
Thank you, Julius. We want to move on to Cio, who is with our San Diego Promise Zone.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Xiomara Crespo. I go by Cio. I am the Promise and Special Projects Manager here over at the City of San Diego's Economic Development Department, which is the backbone organization of our Promise Zone. We support about 80,000 residents if you're familiar with San Diego, in the neighborhoods of Barrio Logan, Logan Heights, the Southeast, and Encanto, a little bit of East Village as well. And we do this by convening 6 different working groups. We have an increasing economic activity working group. We have an increasing access to a quality affordable housing working group. We also have a healthy communities working group, a creating a priority of safety working group, a steering committee that is particularly tasked and concerned with the sustainability of the Promise Zone initiative, but beyond the 10-year designation. And last but not least, creating jobs and improving educational opportunities. Working groups that have been meeting jointly over the last 2 years because they have a joint focus on digital equity and inclusion, improving and creating education pathways, and establishing workforce pipelines through anchor institution programs in the Promise Zone, private business partners, and other, developed events. Just recently, we hosted a job fair as part of a career exploration series that engaged nearly 250 attendees, and it was particularly targeted towards opportunity youth. We had about 29 vendors, and it was a great way in which Promise Zone partners really rallied together to provide these type of opportunities, especially leading to the summer. But ideally, we would love to create some type of workforce pipeline. So I'm excited about the conversations happening today. Staff is also really working closely with the Department of IT here at the city as well to really, prioritize Promise Zone communities as it relates to efforts around digital equity, inclusion, and broadband infrastructure and access. So a couple of the things that we hear from our partners in terms of needs, we have a lot of capacity, needs specifically as it relates to bringing in funding. So we're talking, grant tracking systems, we're talking access to grant writers, grant writer workshops, grant writing workshops, and as well expanded capacity through, for example, our AmeriCorps program. So our partners are really interested as to how to build their volunteer network as well. In my team, I do have Kent and Jessica. They're here today. Thank you for waving. And we couldn't do half of the things that we do without them. So that's a little bit of the San Diego Promise, and I'm going to go ahead and post, hopefully it will let me, a one-pager that I think will be helpful for you to get a better understanding of all the activities and what we do.
Wonderful, thank you. We're going to move on to Zahara Mann, who's with the Slate Z Promise Zone, which is also the South Los Angeles Promise Zone.
Hello, so Zahara Mann, I'm the president and CEO of Slate Z, and we're the backbone entity for the South Los Angeles Promise Zone. Our lead agency is Los Angeles Trade Technical College. The work that we're doing is within South LA, and we're focused on a number of different levers of change that ultimately connect with economic revitalization and environmental sustainability. So we focus on issues related to transit, jobs, education, public safety, and small business and entrepreneurship. Within each of those efforts, we have work groups that regularly meet. And then as part of those work groups, there are various action items that they're working on within each of them to move forward the work and the efforts within South LA for each of them. So for example, jobs has a number of different career pathways that we're focused on. And in the time of the Promise Zone, we've helped move 6,000 residents into living wage jobs. In education, part of their work has to do with work-based learning opportunities for youth. So for example, I think last year there were 800 workplace learning opportunities for youth as we kind of move past the efforts and past the work. As we do our work within each of these work groups, and as our various partners meet, we have about 100 partners from government, community-based organizations, educational institutions, businesses, and then we also have a number of residents outside of that 100 partners who also work with us. But within each of those efforts, we also have various projects, pilots, and initiatives that come out of them. And then those various efforts then have another table that is set around them where we further work on those efforts. So as part of that, we're working on things like universal basic mobility, and we're working on that with Los Angeles Department of Transportation, with LA Metro. That funding is coming from the California Air Resources Board. And we're working with various community-based organizations, offices of elected officials. And we've also trained a group of resident advisors who went through a 3-month intensive training process to be part of a steering committee with all of those various stakeholders to really determine how we carry out implementation of the grant and implementation of the efforts. We're also working with on the Baldwin Hills Conservancy access and resilience plan. And we're working on that with Climate Resolve for funding that then came from the Baldwin Hills Conservancy. And it's really the review of access and resilience efforts within the Baldwin Hills Conservancy. In addition, as we continue that work, there are other pieces that we'll have of efforts that we're further pursuing to be able to bring more of those initiatives and efforts within South LA, and going through the process of working with our partners to build out different aspects that helps to ensure that the level of transformational change that we're seeking in South LA, that it's possible through these various efforts. And some of that even leads to us working on things like the SURF process that's moving forward, and how we can engage and ensure that South LA and communities like South LA are at that table, and are able to help influence like the planning efforts and be part of those planning discussions, as well as what the future holds for how all of that unfolds. And ultimately, as we do our work with our various promise zones, and as we do the work with our various community-based organizations, our main focus is just really ensure that we're fulfilling all of our goals as a place-based effort within South LA, but then also serving as a model for the rest of the region, state, and nation, so that the goals and what we learn within South LA doesn't just stay within South LA, that we're able to use it and export it to other places, so that the benefits that we are able to see, that they're able to see it in high poverty communities all over the country. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank each of our promise zones for these introductions to give everyone a little bit of an understanding of the work that they're doing. And we want to move expeditiously to our first panel. So I'm going to be turning things over to my colleague, Michael Huff, who will conduct the panel of federal partners. To you, Michael.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Danette, and thank you to all of our participants, the panelists, and to all of our attendees. I'm really excited. You can see the energy, you can see the interest in those who've already presented. We're going to have an opportunity to hear from the SBA, the DOL, and from EDA. We're going to have some representatives who are going to answer some questions and then give information to you. And let me just give you a little bit of background on who we have presenting on the panel. You'll see them on the group on the screen in a second. We have from the Small Business Administration, we have Don Golick, the District Director from the Fresno District Office. We also have Heather Luzzi, the Sacramento District Office District Director. So thank you very much for the SBA of sending us 2 qualified people. And then we have the United States, we're gonna have it, the Commerce Department actually, but I usually call it EDA. We have Asia King is the Economic Development Representative for the EDA. And what's really nice is that because we're doing things virtually, she's actually able to be here from Seattle. So we really appreciate that as well. We have representing from the Department of Labor under the program area, ETA, dealing with apprenticeship, is Harry Dispenza. He's the apprenticeship and training consultant for the Department of Labor. Let's see, I see everybody on the screen for Harry. Anyway, we'll go ahead and get started and we'll work it out and get Harry on there as well. But really want to just put out a thank you to our federal partners for taking the time to participate. And you can see the interest from our Promise Zone partners who have presented. We have questions that are already set and we'll go ahead and start with those. The first question is one to kind of open up. We'll start with our contact from the EDA first, Asia King. We'll start out with tell us a little bit about the resources and funding streams, programs, technical assistance that you have in your organization that could support sustainable communities and help strengthen the small business or promote workforce development. What kind of programs do you have available through the EDA?
Sure. Hi. Thanks for having me today. And I just wanted to clarify that I am actually California based. So I'm in San Luis Obispo County. I'm one of the field representatives. So there are three of us here. Some of you in Southern California may know Will, or in Northern California, Melinda, and we all live and work with communities specifically in California. So our main office is just located in Seattle. But just as a quick brief overview, the Economic Development Administration, it's part of the Federal Department of Commerce. It's really a small grant serving agency looking to create jobs, to spur entrepreneurship, to increase private investment, specifically in economically distressed communities. So our mission is really to lead the federal economic development agenda by promoting innovation, competitiveness, preparing America's regions for growth and success in the worldwide economic community. So in other words, we work with local communities to help them realize their economic development goals, funding projects that create high wage, high skilled jobs. So think those head of household jobs, and to do projects that really help businesses flourish. So we, in a normal non-pandemic year, without some of this extra federal funding that's been coming through, we have two main programs called Public Works or Economic Adjustment Assistance. These are fun, competitive grant programs that communities can apply to, nonprofit organizations, any government jurisdiction, and then also institutes of higher education. Those are all the eligible applicants. And we fund projects that are going to create jobs. That at our core is what our agency is really trying to do. We want to see jobs created. We want to see more people employed in higher skilled jobs. And we want to see businesses, we want to help create environments for businesses to flourish. So you can think of everything from construction projects that help spur investment in distressed communities specifically. So that can be traditional infrastructure, roads, sewer, electric lines, things that the local community really needs to help businesses grow. So it doesn't just have to be traditional utilities. We've also started, the Department of Commerce has really been expanding specifically through NTIA into broadband infrastructure, helping establish some of those digital needs in communities. The other program that I mentioned is called Economic Adjustment Assistance. This also funds infrastructure projects, but this program also funds what we call soft projects or non-construction projects. So that can be things like revolving loan funds, feasibility studies, environmental analysis, things that help maybe a future construction project or help a community move closer to implementing economic development projects. We aren't great at funding programming, so we aren't the organization you come to for funding for staff or funding for ongoing programs, but we like to fund concrete one-time investments, maybe to help launch something or to help grow a program that will either serve businesses, serve industry clusters, or create jobs. So that's a quick overview, and I'm happy to answer more questions.
Thank you so much, Asia. We'll go ahead and move to our contacts representatives from the SBA. Heather or Dawn, I don't know who wants to take this first question, but I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks so much, Michael. It's really a pleasure to be here. We, as Asia stated, work with a lot of other federal agencies to help support economic growth. And that can be through contracting opportunities. It can be through assisting businesses in getting started, in getting funding to expand and grow their business. We over the past couple of years, clearly because of the pandemic, we're kind of thrust into the limelight. And sometimes not in a good fashion. But with that said, I think what I would want your audience to understand is that SBA, or the U.S. Small Business Administration, is a federal agency. Our administrator sits at the cabinet level, and our whole focus since the Small Business Act has been to support small businesses and create jobs through a menagerie of different fashions. With that said, we have programs that will help with funding opportunities through, say, our 7A or 504 loan programs. Those might sound a little bit foreign, but just know that they're part of the Small Business Act and thus the names. We also have a contracting program that assists businesses in gaining access to federal contracting opportunities. So there is a federal mandate of a set aside for government contracting. And a lot of businesses don't realize that they, as small businesses, can play a big role in gaining access to these federal contracting opportunities because it's mandated under law that they get a bite at the apple, if you will. We also have an array or network of resource partners that assist us, and we kind of refer to them as our boots on the ground. And those would be like entities such as SCORE, the Small Business Development Center Network, our Women's Business Center Network, and our Veterans Business Outreach Centers. Within the state of California, we actually have 6 different district offices located in San Diego, Orange County, Los Angeles, Fresno, which Dawn's here representing, San Francisco, and of course, Sacramento, which I represent. So in a nutshell, that's kind of where we are. Dawn, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Heather. And thank you, Michael, for the opportunity to share a little bit of information about SBA today. So just to build on what Heather said, I think probably the most important thing for small businesses in our communities across California to know is that they are not alone. They're not alone. And I think many businesses have really struggled mightily over the last 2 years to hang in there. And as our communities are trying to recover and come back, and as businesses are either trying to pivot and figure out how to keep going, or in many cases, new entrepreneurs are trying to figure out how to fill the holes that have been left by the closure of other businesses during the pandemic. None of those entrepreneurs or small businesses are alone. There's a whole myriad of assistance available to help them, as Heather pointed out, not only through the 6 district offices in California, through our network of resource partner agencies, through our lenders, whether businesses need help starting up or they're existing businesses that want help scaling up, they want to add jobs, they're looking at ways to sustain and support their workforce. Those are all things that businesses can get assistance with through the SBA. And so I think the most important thing for our Promise Zone representatives who are on the line today, and for the businesses that they represent, is none of your small businesses are alone and none of your entrepreneurs are alone. And if they need help, it's available through the SBA or through our partners, because like all of you, we too want to see strong, sustainable, economically vibrant communities with solid workforces that are on a growth trajectory. And in particular, again, as Heather mentioned, post-COVID, we know that many businesses have struggled. So I would just close by saying all of our district offices, Heather and I are here as 2, but we have colleagues across the state that are resources for you and for the small businesses that you're serving.
Thank you very much, Dawn and Heather. I'd like to move to Harry with Department of Labor to kind of give us some input on an overview of what resources do you have at the Department of Labor, Harry? Maybe you're still muted, Harry. We can't hear you.
I think that's important. So we were moving forward here. So One of a couple of the things that I want to highlight here. Number one is I've heard some phrases recently as it applies to this, and establishing workforce pipelines and with business partners and job creation and education pathways, job training, those types of things. Well, we work in those arenas, and the Office of Apprenticeship, our staff are uh, an important part of answering questions about the apprenticeship model. We guide partners on each phase of developing an apprenticeship program. We connect businesses to training providers, community colleges, and such. We provide technical assistance and support to those program sponsors. We also assist organizations such as CBOs, community colleges, labor management organizations, as well as individual employers and intermediaries. And we develop and register those apprenticeship programs. There's multiple different programs, technical assistance, resources that are available, and a lot of different federal agencies provide things like that. We have the Department of Labor, the Workforce Development Funds, including WIOA, Trade Adjustment Act, H-1B funds, Women in Apprenticeship and Non-Traditional Occupations, WANTO. So that's part of that. We've got the Department of Agriculture, which has education and training funds available. I don't have the specifics on those, but they're easy enough to find. The Department of Education is another source that might be available. Through either student aid, Pell Grants, federal work study programs. The Department of Transportation, the Federal Highway Administration has on-the-job training and supportive services programs. The Department of Veterans Affairs has educational assistance, as well as does the HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, with financial assistance programs. So, with that, there's just so many opportunities for those, whether it be a funding stream, a supportive program, technical assistance, but those are all available, and they help to strengthen and promote workforce development. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you very much, Harry. Really appreciate that. And as for the audience, and you can see how some of these resources that our federal partners are mentioning actually are potentially overlap and really align and kind of support each other. And that, I see a question a question in the chat about that and about how they might align. But the second question I want to go on to is with what we've heard, what are some steps for the promise zones? What are some steps an organization in the promise zone can take to help apply for the resources that your organization has? Can they apply directly, or do they have to work with the city? How does that work? Maybe we can start out with, let's go ahead and start with the SBA.
Sure, that's a great question, Michael. Thank you. So accessing the U.S. Small Business Administration's programs and products are, it's very simple. First of all, if you're looking for any type of funding opportunities, loans to get started or to grow or to expand in new markets, the thing to understand is that SBA is not a direct lender. We typically do not provide financial assistance or loans directly to small businesses other than times of COVID or disasters in general. So with that said, we work with an array of funding sources, and those can be banks, credit unions, intermediaries that can assist in gaining access to those funds. Where SBA plays the role is that we step in and actually guarantee the loan to that institution. So from the perspective of a small business, it allows them to get over a hurdle. So if there's some type of a deficiency per se in their application, say, a startup businesses are always very difficult to find funding for because there's not a history. There's nothing for a lender to look back at and say, okay, this business can make payroll, this business can make their bills, they can do this. So that's where SBA really plays a vital role in assisting businesses and lenders, quite frankly, in getting over that hurdle. So it's a risk mitigant, basically. The other thing or way to access the programs and services of SBA is through, again, our network of resource partners. All of the services that we offer through our resource partners, technical assistance providers, are free of charge. And when I say free of charge, I think I almost just misspoke. It's really already prepaid by tax dollars. And so it's beneficial for a business to utilize the resources that they're already paying for and already, their tax dollars are going for. So really a great network of resource partners. Again, SCORE, the SBDC network, the Women's Business Center. What I didn't mention last time is our newest partner, which is our Community Navigator partners. You can find all of the information for these partner networks on our website. And you basically would just go to sba.gov/local assistance. Type in a zip code and it will populate a menagerie of options to reach out to. There are classes and certification courses, all types of things for businesses to get the assistance needed. I think I'll stop there and turn it over to Dawn to see if I forgot anything.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. So just to add to what Heather said, I would like to also note that SBA really is working on focusing on reaching out to entrepreneurs and business owners that may feel traditionally left out of programs. Sometimes businesses say, well, SBA is only if you need a $10 million loan. I just need $10,000. They don't have anything for me. And SBA does have our microloan program. Sometimes a business just needs a little bit of capital. They don't need $1 million or $500,000 even. They may just need $5,000 or $10,000 in capital to get going or keep growing. And so SBA is available for even the smallest and most underserved business owners and entrepreneurs. And then additionally, as Heather said, through our Community Navigator program, the SBA, as well as our other resource partner agencies, SBA is also really focusing on how to reach women business owners, those who are in underserved communities, veterans, rural communities, businesses that may, again, feel traditionally left out of programs and services that might really be a resource to help them start up and scale up and, most importantly, succeed. So through either, as Heather indicated, our six district offices across California that businesses can reach out to, or Promise Zone folks can reach out to, or through our network of resource partner agencies, many of whom have staff who are culturally and linguistically competent and can provide services in a variety of different languages. We are here and available to serve small businesses. So it's just the two of us on the call today, but we do represent all of SBA's 6 district offices in California, which cover the entire state. And so there's a variety of portals through which businesses and entrepreneurs are able to access the support and the programs and resources and services that they need.
Thank you, Heather and Dawn. I'd like to, I'd like to pivot to Asia and ask a question, Asia, related to, we received information yesterday that came through on a new program called the Economic Recovery Corps. And just wondered if you could talk a little bit about how that would work to help, the Promise Zones and organizations within the Promise Zones maybe build capacity.
Sure. So this is a brand new funding opportunity from the EDA that, because it's brand new, I honestly don't know that much about it. What I know is that the notice of funding was just released. The deadline for applications is August 5th, and tomorrow there's going to be an informational webinar. And I can put a link in the chat to access that. But basically, this is a two-pronged funding opportunity, and it looks like they're looking to make, it's a nationwide competition, and they're only looking to make a few awards. So it's only a grant for a couple organizations. And what they're trying to build out is this network of what will eventually be economic development fellows. The funds are specifically for the build out of that program. So they're asking for organizations to apply to run a fellowship program. But what it sounds like is eventually there will be economic development fellows or core members that will be able to plug into organizations across the U.S. to add capacity, to help economic development projects that the ED, or help communities that have either already received funds from the EDA or are applying for funds to the EDA, to help those organizations implement their economic development projects. So I really highly encourage everyone to check out the webinar that's going to be taking place tomorrow. I will be on there with you. This is a brand new program, and it's hopefully going to be a pilot that becomes an annual, fingers crossed, becomes an annual program, so that we can build out a really like kind of like AmeriCorps, an economic development corps of fellows. So I'm sorry I don't have more details on that for you, but I will put a link in the chat.
Thank you so
much.
much.
I'm happy to talk about, I just wanted to make one note that while the EDA doesn't, we don't fund businesses or individuals directly, we work through organizations and governments or institutes of higher education. And I really want to highlight that if your organizations or your Promise Zone coalitions, I want to encourage you guys, if you're not already, to get plugged into the Economic Development Administration's comprehensive economic development strategies. These are planning documents, planning processes that the EDA either funds or approves in local communities. They're often in the state of California based on the county that you are in. And those are the planning processes that we interface with at our agency to know what's going on the ground with economic development, what's going on in distressed communities. And so I really want to encourage you guys that if you're not already plugged into, the short name is the CEDS, or Community Economic Development Strategy. If you're not plugged in, please get plugged in. That is a direct route to our funding opportunities, and also just to make sure the federal economic development efforts know what's going on in your community. And then the second thing is, it's really important that you guys get face time with economic development representatives. I represent the San Joaquin Valley and Central Coast, so if you are in those areas, you can talk to me. But it sounds like most of you will either be in Southern California working with Will Marshall, who's been in economic development for 40 years down there. He's based out of LA. And then if you're in Sacramento or Northern California, you can talk to Melinda Matson, and she has been around forever as well, and she's based right outside of the Bay Area. So I'm happy to put you in contact with them.
Thank you so much, Asia. Harry, we have about 2 minutes, and I just wanted to give you a chance to kind of just mention briefly to the Promise Zones the agencies that that you actually collaborate with the Department of Labor.
The agencies that we collaborate with, my goodness. If we're talking about for funding opportunities, there are many. Besides the Employment and Training Administration, we also have the Department of Energy, the Department of Education, and the Department of Transportation. All have been active in supporting registered apprenticeship. But I also want to suggest that there's other opportunities too, and that might be through grants.gov. And grants.gov is a great resource, and there might be existing grants that have already been awarded, and those could be sources for opportunities for the Promise Zones, as well as, there might be future funding resources that that could be coming out that would help to support the workforce development needs of those promise zones. And I'll also mention that on apprenticeship.gov, that's where you'll find the contacts in California that where we can help you to identify the contact person in the state to assist you as you know in your workforce needs, and those specific workforce needs further to develop an apprenticeship program to meet those needs. And you know, it really is there's so many resources available, including grants.gov and apprenticeship.gov where you can find and those resources and find us.
Thank you very much, Harry, and thank you for our participants, our panelists from the EDA, from the ETA, from SBA. I just want to mention that we do have some actual additional follow-up questions in the chat. If you could take a look at those. We're going to I'm going to pass it back to Danette. We're going to pivot to the state panel, but thank you so much once again. And we look forward to continue to grow this partnership.
Thanks so much, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. We're going to transition now to our state panel, which will be hosted by the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity and Mark Palimas.
Great, thank you, Danette. I am just waiting on Ashley to transfer over the host to me. All right, great. So during our last meeting, I discussed the emergence of GO-Biz's community-based solutions group. While we hear more from Derek Kirk later, our CBS supervisor, I'd also like to welcome Raquel Aparicio, the Southern Border Economic Recovery Coordinator covering San Diego and Imperial counties, and Matthew Mena, formerly of our Business Investment Services team, who is now our CBS Southern California Regional Supervisor. If you could please just give a wave of your hand, Raquel, as well as Matt. I'll be introducing those two later on to the respective Promise Zone teams. They'll be happy to share some of their background, as well as describe some of the work that they will be doing to help support community-based organizations and agencies and community and economic development initiatives. So I would also, I'm going to highlight the state panel, and that will comprise Derek Kirk, GO-Biz Community-Based Solutions Supervisor, Larry Riera, California Energy Commission Air Pollution Specialist, and Rafael Aguilera, California Workforce Development Board High Road Field Specialist. So just in a second, I'll highlight them and I'll begin the questions. And looking for you, Larry, found you. Great. Okay, and myself. All right, thank you all for joining me today. I'm going to ask some questions a little bit more specific to some of the programs in which these panelists are representing. So I'll start first with Larry of the California Energy Commission. The Energy Commission has been California's leader in advancing clean transportation and clean energy technologies. How has the Energy Commission ensured California's workforce is ready to adapt to these changes?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate the question and the invitation to present today. I first want to acknowledge Elder and his entrepreneur park. I'll share a little bit of some intersection in my response to this question between the Energy Commission and some of your work, and certainly Julius's work with the Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency. There's also some connection between the work that I do at the Energy Commission and your Promise Zone. So to your question, Mark, it's really important that communities, individuals, particularly the stakeholders here with respect to the Promise Zones, understand these technologies. The rate in which these technologies are moving is so fast that it can be mind-boggling. And the reason I say it like that is that you first have to understand the technology, and then you move into this transition about understanding and moving into the workforce and the work stream for it. The other part of this sort of response and understanding is that the implementation of these technologies has immediate benefits that accrue to these communities, both in terms of costs and economics, in terms of comfort, convenience, and some other things. It doesn't matter whether it is the clean transportation space, electric transportation, or whether it's the clean energy space and the built environment where you work and where you live. All of those are really important. The second point would be that the spectrum with which the Energy Commission has invested in the workforce begins and a couple of programs and areas where we have intentionally invested, and that is at the high school level, where we've stood up brand new ZEV Auto 3 programs is what I'm calling it. So we're now at 40 high schools throughout the state, including those in your promise zones, and I'll put promise zone areas, and I'll put a link in there now because we're still growing that, and it is absolutely on fire. We can't get early enough into the process for the learning, the education, and capturing and harnessing the innovation that's out there. And that'll be really important to adoption across the board. It doesn't matter what economic sphere you're in. The other is the fields, the market segments. We're not just talking installation, construction, service, maintenance. There's certainly participation in the workforce stream from the innovation, design, engineering to the manufacture, production, construction, installation, service, maintenance, and replacements. That entire continuum has a workforce associated with it. And if you go forward in these spaces, it doesn't matter the industry right now. You can start, let's say, with electric vehicle chargers or light bulbs or windows, and know that your path forward, depending on which career you go, your certification processes will lead to other opportunities. So there'll be dividends for you, your families, and that's an important hallmark about this clean energy transition that we're in now, and we will be going forward. And then the last one I'll simply highlight real shortly would be the connection to all the partners that some of you have mentioned in the opportunity zone, not just at the federal level, at the state level, but even groups that you may not think have a role in your development and for your own workforce progress, but certainly an eye on the jobs and the employment, and that being the real key about where you can land with a sustainable job. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Larry. It's really exciting to hear about the high school initiative. I'm really excited to hear about that. I wasn't really aware of that. Next question, I'm gonna same question, but for Derek and for Raphael. As we look to broader economic and workforce programs, can you please tell me how your respective programs were conceived? Derek, the Community Economic Resilience Fund, and Raphael, the High Road Training Partnership. Let's start with Raphael first, and then we'll go to Derek.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Raphael Aguilera. I work with the California Workforce Development Board. I'm a High Road Training Partnerships Field Specialist. I work out of Sacramento, but staff partnerships in different industries all around the state. And a little bit about High Road Training Partnerships. We first got started with, let's see, Prop $98 in 2017. In 2019, we had our first sort of cohort of like different sectors besides construction, and started with a cohort of 8 different projects around the state. Currently, we have 32 active projects in High Road Training Partnerships and 12 High Road Construction Careers projects, and they're all based with an industry partner and some type of labor representation. So what that looks like might be, we call it like the High Road to Public Transit, for example. There's a consortium of public transit agencies working with local labor unions to address workforce issues for bus operators, as well as the technicians that fix them nowadays. And in this transition to electric buses, for example, we're really kind of we've really expanded that work, and from 5 regions, now that's probably gonna expand to 12 regions, and that's just in public transit. So we've grown by leaps and bounds. We've received a lot of funding in the recent budget and last couple budgets actually. You know, it's interesting story of how this project's kind of get going. But in 2019, we were to receive, so the plan was $165 million over 5 years, but then, you know, the pandemic impacted the carbon market. The carbon market kind of left us out, and so we didn't get that funding. Now we're kind of renewing the promise of the ongoing funding, and have received specific funding for partnerships with community colleges, for example, partnerships in healthcare, and even some specific funding for projects around regions in transition affected by fossil fuel industry. So Kern County is one where we, in the budget, might be receiving, if it all goes through, $15 million to help laid off or underemployed oil well industry workers. But just to take a step back and about the model, you know, everything that we do is regional. And so with, you know, the different Promise Zone participants on the line, I know we have projects in Sacramento, for example, with the CMC, California Mobility Center, the Sacramento Municipal Utility District, and a lot of local nonprofits, including our workforce development boards. In LA, we have a ton of projects, everything from hospitality training to electric vehicle, bus manufacturing, to working with local nonprofits in the city to implement energy efficiency programs in disadvantaged communities. And in San Diego, we're coming for you. We really want to build some more projects close to the border and even inland. So looking to check in with you. Yeah. Folks on the call from San Diego and the border region. We do have an exciting proposal we're currently reviewing around Lithium Valley. And I can say for this call, from what I've heard, it's an exciting intersection of economic development and workforce development when we talk about emerging sectors in clean tech, offshore wind, for example. That's a totally new industry in California, right? We're gonna have to talk about supply chains. We're gonna have to talk about port infrastructure and all those jobs that it created, not to mention the benefits of clean energy. Lithium Valley, totally new industry for the state in that region, and it can be done right. It can really uplift folks in that region who have double-digit unemployment for decades. And there's a great debate going on in the legislature about community share over that potential tax revenue. And we're sitting on the sidelines trying to figure out what the workforce opportunities are. It's a great partnership that we have with other state agencies to embed labor standards and job quality metrics and job access points. And sort of our ongoing work is funding specific projects in different regions on a sort of rolling basis. And so I can provide more information later, but that's kind of an overview of how we got started and where we're at now. I will promise to put in a link in the chat about our upcoming grant opportunities. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Raphael. Definitely seems like a lot of connections with what Larry's doing at the Energy Commission, and definitely upcoming with SURF, which Derek will talk about the conception of SURF, as well as please, Derek, take a moment to describe the creation of SURF, what's intention, and hopefully some of the intended outcomes of that program. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mark, and nice to meet those of you that I haven't had the chance to meet yet. So SURF was established, and I'll just say this, forgive me if I'm a little vague in some respect. We have an open solicitation for proposal, and so we're not providing super contextual information because we have it's a competitive process. So forgive me if I'm a little vague, but ultimately SURF was established and signed into law by Governor Newsom in last September of 2021, and ultimately was created after the governor had rolled out inland California and regionally based initiatives to find opportunities to invest resources in the disinvested communities across the state. SURF was established as a means of investing in regional planning and implementation efforts, and really is a really incredibly unique partnership. And so the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, the Labor and Workforce Development Agency, and the Governor's Office of Planning and Research are working on this, each bringing our different unique perspectives to support really this effort. And we have three core objectives, and this is really kind of why it was created in this space. The first being to promote a regions up approach to economic development, resilience, and sustainability. We know that California is a really big place, right? If you look at, the geography of California from Siskiyou to San Diego, there are many different parts, multiple sub-economies, different industry sectors, different geographies, diversities. This is a really massive place. And so we want to promote a regions up approach rather than implementing a one-size-fits-all model. The legislation in large part, I think, is built off of a framework from the program that Raphael helped support, the High Road Training Partnerships, recognizing the uniqueness and individual nature of each of our communities and how we can support communities in really unique and different ways, depending on where they're coming from. So that's kind of primary objective number one. Number two is really this reality that we want to support an inclusive planning process. Economic development in general, in days gone by, has been a pretty closed door process. There's not been many people invited to participate in the process, or people don't understand what economic development is. And so we walk away from it. And so we want to support an inclusive process, allowing people to participate, right? Our neighbors, our community members, different community groups, and labor and environmental justice and business, and everybody should have a seat in trying to determine the vision for their economy moving forward. And then lastly, we're in this unprecedented time of budget surplus in California, and a really incredible some really incredible investments from the federal government through CARES and ARPA and the bipartisan infrastructure law, thanks to the Biden-Harris administration. And we want to look at opportunities to align those resources, make sure that there aren't any missing pieces, any missing gaps in any of our communities, and figure out opportunities to invest in a different way. I always tell people, I feel like I sound Pollyanna when I say this, but this is like our once in a generation opportunity to shift the way in which we're practicing economic development, and doing it in a really unique way with a high road mentality underpinning all of the work that we're doing, ensuring that Californians have the opportunities that they deserve, and that California communities have the opportunities to support their communities or their people, their residents, in a really different way. And so we're excited about this approach. We're excited that the three agencies are working together in this respect, and think that we've got some unique opportunities, again, to shift how we do things for the future.
Excellent. Thank you, Derek. Question for Larry. We heard a lot about inclusive economic development from Derek in the process, and that being pivotal or instrumental in the SURF formation as well as SURF planning and implementation. What steps does the Energy Commission take to ensure that clean energy investments in workforce development is inclusive of disadvantaged communities?
There you go. Sorry about that. Thank you, Mark, for the question. Let me provide a little bit of context. The primary program and area I work is clean transportation. That has been a $100 million annual portfolio of funds for the last almost 15 years. I put a link to one of the workforce solicitations where I led a team and some funding on community-based solutions specifically. And this was 100% focused on low-income, disadvantaged community solutions in this clean transportation sector. But that being said, our clean transportation portfolio, program portfolio, has set a floor of 50% of those funds going as direct investments and benefits into the very communities that we're talking about. That is a floor. On the workforce space specifically, that's 100%. This is embraced by our leadership at the California Energy Commission, the commissioners, and others as well. It's important that communities kind of put forward, identify their own resources in their backyard, and then how can we facilitate that growth, that building of community wealth, if you will, and certainly intergenerational wealth and job creation as well. So this is in addition to all the tools that are available to the state. This is the Callan Viral Screen specifically, but there's other areas and stories and narratives we don't get to hear that are not part of a tool or a complex. And that's the storytelling part of this. This is where we don't know and have not been able to visit some of those neighborhoods that we talk about. And so it's really important that those get characterized and kind of pop up to the top so we better understand and support direct investments and partnerships to facilitate their growth. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Larry. Next question for Raphael. You had mentioned some of these examples of some industry sectors that you've been engaged with. Can you please describe some additional examples of how the HRTP has advanced sustainable industries that have been mentioned today, such as electric vehicle, advanced manufacturing, or others?
Yeah, there's so many examples. What we're trying to do simultaneously, and I appreciate Derek for kind of the shout out on the framework. It's still our working framework. It kind of evolves over time and adapts to different industries, but it comes down to trying to simultaneously address, economic disparities, the climate crisis, and job quality, right? And all those things kind of really came to a head during the pandemic. And at the same time, we have these, statewide environmental goals. We also have statewide economic goals for, equity, inclusion, and increasing diversity. And so the high road approach really, we've been able to glean sort of the best practices from different industries around the state and through a community of practice, a peer-to-peer network of our existing HRTPs, whether they be from the Central Coast or the Inland Empire. We get together on a weekly, bi-weekly call and sort of have topical conversations around, what's working for a certain sector, whether it be a tool, whether it be a practice, whether it be sort of an emerging trend, working with barriered populations, software for analyzing sort of case management and things like that. But it's an intersectional approach is really what it is. And working with every industry to become more sustainable. When you think about green jobs, right, it's kind of a misnomer because at this point in California, we have economy-wide climate goals. And so hospitality needs to get green, manufacturing, right? Not to mention obviously like fossil fuel industries and extraction as well as refining, which we're working in those sectors, but green custodial services, for example. We're working with the meat cutters to figure out how they can, be a little bit more efficient and even making improvements in healthcare with the way they train through telehealth. We'll be working on broadband access. We know there's a relationship between the electrical grid and telecommunications when it comes to smart grids, battery storage, charging, load management, energy efficiency, right? And sort of, the future economy. And so it's kind of interesting being on the forefront of a lot of different conversations, but I can say this, what we're really trying to do is transform industry by industry and sector by sector and region by region through high road training partnerships where you have employers who are willing to kind of distinguish themselves by being, in the lead on addressing workforce and economic development issues, sitting at the table with organized labor or the worker representation to hammer out better training programs. I'll give you one example, high road training partnership to tree trimming. We've had these horrendous and disastrous wildfires, right? And part of it is a lack of trained and qualified workforce, in addition to climate change, right? But you know, the industry itself is one of the most dangerous industries, tree trimming, and it's also one of the least paid, right? And so there was a bill that got passed. It's an example of how policy really can help to lift up a sector that required living wages and a training certificate for all these new qualified, what is it called? Line clearance tree trimmers is the new classification. And so our goal is with this project to train 2,000 tree trimmers over the period of 3 years. We're coming up to the halfway mark, but you know, it's 75% monolingual Spanish speaking, and there was no training program in Spanish. You know, there's subcontracting going on, and hard to find accountability within the industry for who's trimming what. And so now we've helped raise the level of sophistication in the industry that pays better and safer, and you know, all California hopefully is safer from these wildfires and stuff. And that's just one project, but it's also improving the lives of folks in that industry. And what's exciting is it will become financially self-sufficient over time because of the involvement with the IBEW, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, taking on this line of work when it's not specifically electrical, but it's so related and integral and dependent around getting access to those lines, and the National Electrical Contractors Association and the tree trimmers contracting services of the largest ones in the state. And so these are baked in contracts. There's been changes to the law that require these things, and now we're just implementing and creating a sustainable infrastructure for the training itself. So just an example of how, you know, we're working on those levels, but there's many more, and we got a long way to go.
Sorry, I meant to unmute myself, but I accidentally muted you, Raphael. I apologize about that. This question for Derek. So as the planning and implementation, I say, because it rolls out for SURF, how might community-based organizations start to understand how the process works? How might they be able to get involved during this process of such a large scale regional planning, to the extent that you can share with us, and then let us know at what, you know, the timeline and when this may start to happen.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Mark. We are excited about the reality that we are building a really big table in 13 regions across the state. I've used the analogy a couple of times in the last few weeks of like, this is the time, like at the holidays when you have to bring the leaves out from under the stairs and put them in your tables to make it bigger. Bring the office chair and bring everybody's chairs in from their rooms, and maybe even add some folding chairs. But the best part about this is that there will be no kids table, right? Like, this is one big family table for our regions to start developing and working collaboratively together. I love the analogy of the work in Fresno, the Fresno Drive initiative that was supported by the Central Valley Community Foundation. I have heard them say in the past, when they were having a discussion about an issue and they realized that there wasn't an expert at the table, they paused the conversation and went out to their community to find an expert in childcare or broadband or whatever that was, and brought them to the table. And they ended up with 300 individuals sitting around a table, helping to figure out the vision for the city and community of Fresno and that greater region. We imagine a very similar process, though we're not dictating what that process could look like, because I know it's going to look different in the Redwood Coast versus, the southern border region. We think that there's an opportunity now. We're not facilitating any introductions to organizations that might be interested in applying, but there's an opportunity now for you to reach out to the organizations in your community, reaching out to your cities or counties, reaching out to other organizations that might be participating in this process to start a conversation. really important as things move along for the promise zones to connect with both Mark, but also your regional economic recovery coordinator in the region. Those coordinators will be sitting at the tables that are set as our representative and boots on the ground, and will be able to make sure that you have a direct contact into those spaces. We think, again, there's room for everybody. We shouldn't be excluding anyone. We want to bring more voices into the table. And as these promise zones in particular are these really fabulously designated spaces, right? We want to make sure that we're pulling you all into the conversation and learning really particularly what are the needs of the zone that you represent and the community that you're supporting. So I'm excited to be able to pull you into the future if you're not already engaged.
Great, thank you, Derek. I had one question that we received earlier this week from some of the Promise Zone organizations, and it was just more of a technical question that I think is good for their understanding. It's just, how will comprehensive economic development strategies, or CEDS, align with this process? What's the relation between the two?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So CEDS, as you heard from Asia earlier, right, are documents that the EDA requires for eligibility. The guidelines for SURF actually match up really fabulously with the guidelines for a CEDS from the EDA. And so at the end of this planning process, a county or a local government could adopt the SURF plan as their CEDS and be eligible for future funding. That was a really intentional component. But the guidelines as they sit, encourage local partners to consider existing economic development strategies as they consider this larger regional scope. Asia mentioned earlier that most CEDS in California at this point are county specific. And so, we see a unique opportunity to bring those together and move a little higher up in the funnel, or, consider additional opportunities to connect the dots on how things are going to be done, right? Not every county or community is going to be able to do everything, but how can we align resources and connect the dots as we go? And so they don't supplant one another. They could be the same thing. In some cases, they could be, lower, a CEDS could be a little lower on the funnel, if you will, more specific to an exact jurisdiction. There's lots of different areas to play, but again, we're not dictating what that relationship will look like. We're ultimately leaving it up to the communities and the regions to tell us.
Excellent, thank you, Derek. I have one more question for each Larry and for Raphael. We're coming down on time here, so it'll be 2 minutes in your responses each. Just want to know, what are ways that Promise Zone and their partner organizations can get involved in your programs? Let's start with Larry.
I think, it's important to understand the role of networking and branching out and knowing your own backyard. The resources that we talked about today weren't there 2 years ago. In some respects, the dollars are new, the partnerships will be new, the path forward will be new. And so I think it's really important to simply survey your own backyard and then stay connected to the larger body of folks in your own community. If there are new areas, you're going to have to develop new skill sets to reach out to folks, to employers, to the workforce entities to begin your journey, whether that's for yourself, your community, your family. You're going to have to, this transition away from our recent health pandemic is charting a new path forward. And so we need to take that on as individuals and as communities. That being said, all these organizations have websites connected, and you can connect to people, including myself, in the clean transportation and the clean energy space.
Great, thank you, Larry. Raphael?
Yeah, so one of the unique things about my position is I get to, as a field specialist, work with not only existing projects, but, interested potential projects. So like I said, Promise Zones is kind of a new, playing field for me, I guess, working with folks in the community on the ground. Happy to set up a meeting, happy to follow up and have individual conversation, talk about the high road model and examples, and maybe even there's opportunities to plug into existing to expand into a new region, something that's already going on somewhere else, or just come up with an entirely new high road training partnership proposal. And we do have a grant opportunity kind of ongoing now. You can apply at any time online, and we pull the applications quarterly and then make award announcements sort of on a rolling basis as well. And so, you know, unlike many grant programs, I think we're able to fund partnerships themselves. And we want to eventually, you know, reach the outcomes of job placements and trainings and all that, and the long-term improvements in wages and things like that. But we know it starts with partnerships. And, you know, we do have a lot of partnerships in urban areas, and we're looking to find ways to expand those into, you know, semi-urban or para-urban kind of communities that are nearby, and rural communities. And I know most of these are urban partnerships, but we can't forget about the relationship that we have between the urban and the sort of para-urban environment as well. I think that's critical for sustainable development as well. So yeah, happy to connect. I put my information in the chat, and please feel free to reach out.
Excellent. Thank you, Raphael. And also a great, a big thank you to Derek and to Larry. Appreciate your time and sharing your valuable resources with us in the Promise Zones. Looking forward, there's a lot of relationship between all of them. It sounds like obviously partnership is huge, but understanding that we're evaluating, we're considering these approaches from design, from implementation, and also the retirement of some of these new products and new innovations that come online. So it's great to hear that we're thinking about whole life cycles of these emerging trends that are coming forward. Appreciate the time. I'm going to kick it back over to Danette with HUD to close us out and to introduce the topic that we'll be discussing later on in this fall. Again, appreciate it. And Promise Zone partners, I hope you got some valuable insights out of this as well. Thank you.
I want to just thank everyone who took the time to be with us today and present information for our panels. This is really helpful to the communities that we're serving. As we shared with the Promise Zones prior, we're looking forward to continuing to host these events. Our next series will be in October. In October, we're going to focus on the strategic goal of supporting underserved communities. And what we want to do is provide resources about how to fortify underserved communities and support economic opportunities that are equitable for all people. We also want to look at how we can promote equitable community development that generates wealth building in underserved and underrepresented communities, particularly communities of color. So we'll be bringing together a similar panel as this one in the month of October. Also in the interim, we will be sharing resources with Promise Zones about economic opportunities that we see that may be of use to you, along with grant opportunities that we believe will be useful to you also. As we close out this event, I just want to remind everyone that we will make the recording available along with the links that our federal and state partners have shared with us. And again, I want to thank all of our panelists for taking their time to be with us today. And I also want to thank our Promise Zones and their staff for being present. And we hope that everyone has a good week.